I left my body and I could see myself looking down on my body, looking down on all these people, looking down on the teacher, but then I kept going. I was way above the earth. I was past the moon. I was moving out of our solar system. I realized I want my body. I want to be in this thing. Whatever's pulling me out, stop it. It's my decision when I leave, not anything else's.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Awake with Lady. I am your host, Lady, and today we're joined by Nadia Fairlamb, an artist, holistic art therapy facilitator, and guide whose journey of self discovery and transformation has helped many reclaim their creativity and inner power. Through art therapy, movement, and spiritual practices, she empowers others to overcome deep emotional wounds and unlock their full potential. Nadia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, lady, for having me today.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure and honor to have you on today. I am looking forward to our conversation because your story is a little bit different. I know that you're an artist and you were an artist actually growing up. You had artistic abilities. But can you tell us about the moment that set you on your spiritual journey?
Yeah, there were many, many, many moments. I think the earliest moment was being a young girl. I was probably kindergarten, something like that, or right before kindergarten. And I was living in Germany at the time. My parents were military. So I grew up in Germany, and I just remember being in my body, but then also feeling like, what's going on? What is this? And why do I have this particular one on right now? But I was also, kindergarten, so I just played with it and it just felt like play, okay, I'm going to wear this suit today. I'm going to wear this costume and this hair. And that was one of the first, I think, more conscious moments in my life of wondering, thinking about, there's more to this life than what I see. And there's more to this life than my parents and my family and my society and community and religion lead me to understand and see.
Understand. And that is very important because sometimes we were talking before we started recording about memories that I have when I was a child. And sometimes, at least in my personal case, I thought that these memories were dreams. Was that the case for you, or were you always aware, like when you grew up, you knew that these were not memories that you like dreams, but
it, it
actual
was
memories?
it wasn't a dream. It was more of a real lived experience of recognizing there is an energetic substance that is me, that is
Hmm.
separate from my physical body. Somehow we are here together. I don't know how to put words to this thing, and it's a little weird and awkward, and I do recall having a couple of out of body experiences at that age too.
Oh, can you share some of those?
Yeah, yeah. Well, fortunately, living in Germany, I lived in a tiny little town in the middle of nowhere in Germany, and there were castles everywhere. So it was very much informed by a medieval culture, a medieval Christian culture. And there's a lot of mythology about dragons and, knights and castles and the whole medieval system. And so I recall playing games at that age too and looking out the windows and seeing dragons go by. So 3, 4, 5 years old, imagination, or what am I seeing? To me, it was very, very real. But in those moments, in those times, I would also then feel this withdrawal of my energy from my physical body. And it's like a pulling outward or and absolutely upward. It was always an upward motion for me of like that my persona, my personality leaving my form, my body. but I kind of liked it. It felt fun to me. It felt kind of like a game because I was just a little kid. And it happened several times. I do recall that. And then that specific sensation happened, I think, again in high school and college, and until I met my spiritual teacher that I had that showed me exactly what that was going on and what it was.
So I do want to talk about your spiritual teacher as well, but before we go there, going back to your experiences going out of body as a child, again, it was real to you. It was real. You were seeing different dimensions.
Yes.
Did you ever tell your family or parents about it? And if so, do you remember what their reaction was?
No, I never told anybody. No, not until I was in college and that I met, that friend group where we were all like, of course we've had these experiences. Of course, this is our reality. I never did. But I also withheld a lot of information from my parents and my sister just because nobody ever talked about anything like that. I grew up Jewish and it wasn't part of, the Shabbat services or any of the other temple services or any of the Torah readings. Like nothing in there was ever equivalent to what I
Hmm.
was experiencing. And it was just, yeah. And I was always just a really private, quiet child. Like I kept all of
Hmm.
my, honestly, I kept a lot of my own joy to myself too. I had a challenging relationship with my sister. She was an older sister. So when I would be expressive of my own personal levels of joy, it would make her very upset. And that's a whole nother conversation to talk about, sibling dynamics, trauma, blah, 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 all that stuff. But so just at that stage in my life, I learned to keep these things to myself.
Yeah, and I think many people in that during that stage tend to keep things to themselves, maybe mainly because of the fear of being told, "Oh, you're crazy," you know? Because that is very common. At least when I was growing up, yeah, she's kind of crazy. She's saying that she says that she sees dragons. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So,
But I think probably at
mhm.
3, 5 years old, well, of course you do because you're a child.
Yeah, the imaginary friends.
Yeah, it's your imaginary dragons, not the actual, like, look, there's an actual dragon going by. Can you guys not feel this and see
Right.
this? What's wrong with you people?
For sure. Now, tell me about your spiritual teacher and your experiences with them.
Yeah, that's an interesting journey. So for me, to even get to the meeting the spiritual teacher and the importance and the significance of that in my life and how that changed so many things for me, I will backtrack and go towards like the things that led up to why that even cracked open in me, that desire and that longing to have a guru, to live in an ashram type setting, to be a renunciate, to spend a lot of time meditating and contemplating God in the way those belief structures do. So when I was in university, I got a degree in sculptural ceramics and archaeology, and I always had those interests in other cultures, other worldly cultures, and then, of course, creativity and art. And then I got married out of college. So instead of finishing my master's degree, I got married. And so I had built up a pretty strong layer of I'm going to do what you want me to do first instead of completing what's right for me. My whole life was full of that, of I'm going to do what the man tells me to do kind of thing. And then, oh, I'll finish up my master's degree. I'll get married now. Oh, I'll finish up that later. I'll do what you tell me to do now. All of those things. And so for me, it was the year 2000. And I had just gotten married. And it was the whole Y2K thing that was going on. It was just so hyped up that a couple of days after New Year, and nothing had changed, not a thing, that it triggered something within me of just like, what is going on here? Why do people get so wrapped up with this stuff and really believe it? And also at the time being married, I thought I would be really happy being married. And I thought this is what I wanted to do. I thought this is what everybody told me to do. Everybody told me, you get married, you have children, you do blah, 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 and then you'll be happy, and then you'll be content and satisfied with your life. And partway through that, I realized, I don't know if this is what I want. It was similar to what you said. I go to work, I make art. I was working for a different company at the time. I'm married, we go out and do these things. Everybody else parties around me. I don't drink, I don't do drugs. I couldn't even eat the way most people did. I had food allergies. And I just started questioning everything. And then it became real. Like that question I had as an infant or as a child of like, oh, why am I here? And why am I in this skin suit? It was, why am I here? Why am I in this skin suit? Like, why am I me? What makes me me? Why am I here in this time period in human history? Why am I conscious now and not 500, 5,000 years ago? Why me? Why here? Why now? And after having all of those feelings and emotions and thoughts and all of that come through, my husband and I have eventually separated and eventually divorced. And it was in that divorcing process where those questions got so extreme and so loud that I was so heartbroken and so confused and so lost that I was seriously contemplating suicide. I could not find joy anywhere in life with anything, not with my art, not with myself, not with anything. And I just wanted to be out of this body. And so there was a day where that voice got really, really loud. And I was going through the motions of planning. It's like, well, if I want to kill myself, these are the steps I'm going to go through. And it was very logical. There was no emotion. This is my choice, my decision. It's my life. Nobody else gets to decide for me. And and I know for some people, this subject of purposefully electing to end one's own life can be very triggering and can be or people don't want to talk about it. But I feel like it's the highest form of self-autonomy to get to that precipice and choose not to. And nobody else helped me choose not to. I chose not to. So, and there was a voice in my head when I got to that really strong precipice place that said, don't, there's something waiting for you. You're about to meet somebody. And so there was that voice and there was that understanding. And 6 months later, I met the human that became my spiritual teacher, that I was a disciple to for over a decade. And in that relationship, it's a multi-tiered relationship. I'm not going to say that this thing was really rosy and golden or healthy in a lot of ways, because a lot of times these dynamics aren't, and it wasn't at the end. It wasn't, but I did get all of my questions answered as to why me, why now, why this body, why my personality, why is it that I can actually ascend out of my body and see things from above, and what is this thing all about? So my teacher was versed and trained in a more Eastern esoteric system from India. So this would be more of the lineage of Babaji and Yogananda, and it's more of a yogic, not yoga as in the poses, but the yogic system of belief structures. So yeah, he was a revealer of light. He was a guru. He had the ability with his own touch to support a human being in their spirit, ascending out of their body. And so I practiced that a lot with him in meditation and learned the beauty of that and the perfection of that. And the one moment that was the most pivotal for me was I had a complete release from my body. It was such a strong, profound release. And it wasn't as if he was doing and nothing had happened. I was sitting in an auditorium listening to him speak. It was like just another Wednesday, right? And there was nothing special. But in that moment, something within me was able to detach so fully that I left my body, and I could see myself in looking down on my body, looking down on all these people, looking down on the teacher. But then I kept going. I was way above the earth. I was past the moon. I was moving out of our solar system and just shifting and drifting away. And it was the most powerful, profound, terrifying, physically painful, because my body, it's like if you leave your body too long, your body, these two things, they have to be together. They can't, one dies, the other goes, right? There's no choice. But what I discovered and what I felt and what I saw is all of my fears, doubts, worries, genetic imprints from my family, all of the cultural imprints from being Jewish, even the all of like the cultural dogmatic BS that was part of the spiritual community that I was in, because that thing was a hot mess. It couldn't last. It was just horrible. And so all of that, and I was away and out of all of it, and I was up there and out of there, and I decided, it's like, no, I want my body. I want to be in this thing. Whatever's pulling me out, stop it. Just leave me alone. It's my decision when I leave, not anything else's. And so I came back into my body, and it's like, if you sleep and you sleep on your arm the wrong way, and then it goes numb, but then for it to wake back up, it gets all tingly and it really hurts for a while. And so that's exactly what it felt like my entire body. I was like, phew, I don't want to do that again. And it was that at that particular moment that I decided, I'm done with the teacher. I don't want this anymore. I want a life where body, mind, emotion, spirit is respected, and my soul and my body and all of these are supposed to be one and meant to be one. My teacher's preface was, just keep leaving your body, keep leaving your body. All your problems will be solved if you disassociate and leave your body. You'll be more spiritual. You'll blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but I have no money in my bank account, so I'm out. So it's like, I kind of need to eat and pay my bills. So I'm leaving. Yeah. So that was like the culmination of that. And now 10 years later, or I should say about 9 years later, after I left that spiritual group, is my life today.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. It is really important. I mean, kudos to you for using discernment and knowing when to leave. I think that many of us may struggle with that and, setting the boundaries and sometimes standing up for yourself because we may think that we're doing a disservice and that whatever is going on, whatever we are experiencing is normal. That is not always the case. If it feels good to you, keep doing it. If it doesn't feel right, if something is off within yourself and you're like, oh, I'm not sure, then, just make sure that you have your boundaries and listen to yourself. So thank
Yeah.
you for that. Hmm.
And I'm not going to lie, right? Because leaving that community it did take years after I had that
Hmm.
decision. It took me several years to have the courage to be able to push the teacher away, because there was too much of my life wrapped around that thing. And it was one of those kinds of communities with a narcissistic, strong leader where they
Yeah.
encourage you to cut yourself off from the outside world. So for me to exit that thing, I had no support. I had no support financially. I had no family support. My mother had died. Other things had changed. So for me to leave, it
Hmm.
took a lot. It took a lot of courage, and I had to burn a bunch of bridges on purpose to get out, because he didn't want you to leave. And I saw other individuals that when
Hmm.
they decided naturally of their own accord, like, wow, thanks, I'm good, I'm gone, he would tear their life apart, and he would insert himself into their family unit and start spreading lies, and it would destroy businesses and lives and relationships, children being taken away from their parents, like that kind. So this guy, I mean, and if anybody wants to see, I like to keep my life open, and it's actually, there's a movie on it. We were on Netflix for a while. We got all the way to Netflix, and the movie is called Holy Hell. So it's out there. You can watch it.
Wow. Wow. I'll make sure to, if I can find it or,
Yeah,
link some
and
information on
just
that too.
if you watch it with a
Mhm.
grain of salt, and watch it from
Of
the
course.
perspective of, we can always learn something. I can always learn something from any situation I'm in.
Hmm.
And knowing what I know now, I'm grateful for that situation, and I'm grateful that I developed the internal courage to leave.
Yeah, absolutely. That is just remarkable because I've never been in that situation, but from others, and I've watched, similar shows too, it's
Yeah.
very challenging to live in your life after that is
Yep.
rocky to say the least. So, if you don't mind, can we talk a little bit about your life after that? You don't have to share like specific details, but just for people to have an idea of how it was like for you to integrate back and basically sever those bridges and burn those bridges that you had in that community and integrating back to basically being on yourself and finding your own way.
The first few years were really, really hard. And that desire for suicide came up many, many times. And I
Hmm.
got to that precipice again many, many times. But this time there was something in me that said, you know what? No, I've been through too much. I've had too much taken away from me. I want to know what it feels like to really be alive and just be me now. And one thing I can always trust, like if I know without a doubt, I have the ability to pull to me resources, mentors, teachers, tools to help me with the next phase of my life. If I look at that spiritual teacher as at that particular moment in my life when I needed those really pivotal answers, I got them. Right? It's like, wow, I'm really powerful that I pull that caliber of teacher to me and I can still be autonomous. So that was the big lesson from that. So when I left, I was broken. I was broken mentally, emotionally, even physically. I had panic attacks all the time, the kind like where you curl up in a ball and you can't breathe
Hmm.
and you can't do anything but cry for hours. And one of the individuals that I knew that had been part of that cult with me, and he had left before I had, he went to this personal and business development training. And at the time, I was really crying out for how do I be me again? How do I
Hmm.
integrate all of this spiritual, energetic understanding and stay here in my body and have sanity? And so I went through a couple of years of these trainings, and it was all very logical, no nonsense, zero religion, really straightforward. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. And it helped. And I still had a lot of emotional ick that I needed to deal with. But what came from that was two really pivotal things. Actually, I should say three. One, the main CEO of this company, she was actually very energetically sensitive. And whenever I would start to leave my body, she would just know her back would be to me. She'd be giving this lecture and she'd yell out, Nadia, knock it off. Something like that, because I knew that I was leaving. And at that time, I had no control to pull myself back in. Or she'd just come from out of the blue and put her hands on my shoulders and literally push me into the floor and say, stop it. Anybody else that would be listening might say, well, that's mean, but I needed that. I
Hmm.
needed somebody to be like, mom, be like, knock it off, stop it, do this, grow up, be mature, be an adult, stop. So that was, I mean, how I met her after that, I'm just like, I'm just going to trust myself that I can pull the right people to me after that, right? Because I had her. Another thing is one of the other mentors. When I was done with the whole training course, I paid this woman to be my coach for half a year. And her first lesson to me was, I'm not going to work with you until you go get EMDR therapy. I had paid this woman already I had paid for a bunch of sessions, but she knew me so well. And then she said, like, you go get EMDR, then I'll work with you.
Wow.
So, and then EMDR bringing me back to my body. It helped me integrate body, mind, emotion, spirit. It helped me integrate all of the reasons like inside of my persona that made me a perfect disciple.
Hmm.
Why did I follow people so blindly as a child? Why did I follow my husband so blindly? It's like, what were all the things that led up to all of that? So there was all of that that worked in. And then the third thing from that was I met a group of women and we became a mastermind group. and we've supported each other in moving forward in our lives. And they all knew my story. They knew my background, and they would never let me stay in it. Whenever I would have panic attacks or worry or slip back into the past, they were a constant reminder of what's next. And
Wow.
I would talk about it too much or go on about the story and the drama. All three of them were like, shut it, zip it, stop it, stop. And they would call me out. So I had a lot of support moving forward with that. And then it was at that point after I left that spiritual group too that I had already been doing my art and making my art professionally for about 4 years while I was in the cult with the teacher. But I wasn't making much money from it, and there wasn't much traction, and I didn't believe in myself, and I was just feeling so yucky. And it was at that time I decided, okay, I'm either going to make this thing work or I'm not. I know I'm a well-trained artist. I've been doing this for 35, 40 years. I know what the frick I'm doing. So let's just go for it. And I burned all the boats and I cut all the bridges and I quit all the part-time jobs. And I said, this is what I'm doing professionally. This is my new identity. And I'm now going to make a living from this. And it took a
Yeah.
little bit and it took a while and it took several years to get to the place where, yep, now I'm making a living. Now this is what's happening. And then several years after that to go from, okay, now I want to be like an actual artist. Now I want to integrate all of my experiences and make things with it out of my hands that's felt, and so that my audience and my viewer is getting this understanding of my experiences.
That is
And
beautiful.
yeah, and so now I would say I'm at the point with other coaches and other mentors, because I have 5 other mentors and coaches right now from different areas. They keep me locked in. And a couple months ago I had my first $20,000 commission for this piece of art. And this woman calls me all the time and she says, I don't understand your art, but every time I see it, my hair stands up and I feel like my life changes. And I'm like, bam, I did it.
And that is a beautiful, a beautiful outcome. Unfortunately, you have to go through the rocky road and basically encountering this particular teacher, spiritual teacher. And you basically answer the question. I wanted to know, like, looking back at it, what were the lessons that you got from that experience, which you basically already answered. And in one of your answers, you said that you found a coach, I believe you said. And she said that before she can work with you, you had to do EMDR therapy. For
Mhm.
those out there that don't know, can you explain to
Yeah,
us what
of
that is?
course. It's a form of mental therapy. So for people that are listening to this and that are feeling rocky in their own relationship, and you're finding that you're stuck doing things you don't want to do, but you're still doing them no matter how hard you try to get out of it, or you're stuck in certain emotional states no matter what you do, you can't change these mental and emotional states. EMDR is not talk therapy. So EMDR, eye movement rapid desensitization, and it was developed for Vietnam War veterans that came back
Mhm.
from the Vietnam War that had PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, from their experiences and could not integrate into society, were having flashbacks, and were basically dysfunctional individuals. So, in this form of therapy, you either have a moving finger that you watch with your eye, or there's an electric impulse that's stimulated in your hands, or you do a bilateral tapping across your body, and it grounds you in your body. And then you go through like a regression state. So, it is like a talk therapy state where you regress back in time to when that major emotional impact landed in your body, because our body always holds on to the traumatic, unwanted experience. It holds on to it to keep you safe. That's our way of surviving. And so you go back into that experience And then the therapist helps you unwind it, rewrite it, and you come back forward in time having written or rewritten your personal life script. And having had done that, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of therapies and sessions like that I've done, but it works. It is highly effective. So that's what
Beautiful.
EMDR is.
You also partially answered this question, but I want to get more details. How has your art been influenced by your spiritual experiences and having worked with this spiritual teacher?
It's always been very easy for me to express with my hands, and being a really kinesthetic active woman, I've always expressed through arts, whether it's dance or making things. Everything you see behind me, this is like the two-dimensional work, but I do 3D wood sculpture, large scale, so big stuff. In one of the moments where I realized that I wanted to leave the spiritual community, where I realized, this enough is enough. This guy is nuts, and I've gotten what I've gotten, and staying here is, really killing things. That was the moment also when my mom died. And my mother was the one person that always encouraged me to make art. She sent me to art school. She always saw my skills, talents, and abilities and always encouraged that. And so after she died, I realized, well, what the heck am I waiting for? We've spent this time, money, and energy. This is the thing I'm the best at. Little fly going by. Why am I not doing anything with this? This is a waste of my life. So while I was exiting the spiritual group, I was keeping the art alive. And I wouldn't say back then I was making anything that was really art to the way I perceive art to be. It was like crafty things that I could sell at craft fairs to the tourists here in Hawaii. Tourists will buy stuff. That means you make money. So it was after I left that spiritual group that I had another sort of out of body, but this time in body experience. Unfortunately, I had pushed myself to the point of exhaustion. So it's easy to have out of body experiences when you're exhausted. I don't recommend it. I recommend learning to have them while you're sane, while you're grounded, and know exactly what to do to leave and exactly what to do to come back in and exactly how to caretake this vessel so that it can welcome you back in a healthy way and that both of you guys are cool together. But I needed to create something that was a higher end something for this big art show that I was doing. I was super tired. I sat down. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to create? And I felt that out of body experience thing happen. But I pulled myself, I'm not leaving. I'm staying here. And then bam, flash on the screen of my mind. I saw exactly what to create. I saw exactly how to create it. I had never made anything like this before. I had never made anything this big. I didn't even really know how to use the tools right. But I knew it's like, and I don't even know how I knew that I believed. All I know is that it felt it, like it landed. Boom, it landed. And so then I got up from that thing and I started making it. And then I think that was like the most I ever made from one piece of art. At that point, it was like $2,300 or something from one piece. And it was at that moment, there was something inside of me that noticed, that paid attention. And I said, oh, there's something to this. What just happened? And how do I recreate that state without being in burnout? So that's what I've learned since then. And so that's how I use the words co-create now. That's how now I connect with, have a source prayer conversation of like, all right, what do you want me to create? What is it that you want me specifically to make with my hands so that some other human on the planet has the impact you're trying to move through me to somebody else?
Wow,
So
that
that's,
sounds amazing.
yeah, so that's what my art is now. People do it with music, dance, books, things, but mine is a physical, visual experience.
Wow. It almost sounded to me as if you were like channeling while creating your art.
Yeah, I suppose you could use the word channeling. That would be
Mhm.
I've never really used that before. I think because I've heard the word channel so much from so many people. I'm like, really? Channeling? Okay, whatever. Like,
Like,
yeah,
I'm different.
you're, hanging around, I'm just gonna have to say it. You're like a crystal Christian channeling. Like, I can't do it. Like, the real people that channel the stuff that's like not like that.
Well, let's just say that you're in the zone and you're connected, tapped in,
In the
connected when
flow,
you're
in the
in
flow.
in the
I
flow.
call it I
Exactly.
call it in the creative zone, and it's a co-creative state where I can purposefully receive an image in my
Mhm.
mind. I see how it's meant to look and how it's supposed to be made, and I see every step of the process and how to make it. And then I get up and do it.
You mentioned about being in the flow, and that leads me to ask you, you've worked with yoga and dance therapy for many years. How do these practices support emotional and mental well-being for you and maybe the people that you work with?
Okay. Again, this goes back to being a young child. When I was a little girl and a young child, I was very physically active. And when I was little, I observed that when I'm physically active, I always feel better about myself, especially in high school. I feel better about myself mentally, emotionally. And I observed all of the adults and all the other people around me. Nobody exercised, nobody ate well, and nobody really felt good about themselves. So that's what led me into becoming a yoga teacher and also led me to doing different dance modalities because I knew the better I could feel in my body, then the better I feel about myself. And the better my life feels. So when I left that spiritual group, I leaned back on that premise again of let's get my body into a place where it's feeling better, then I know my mind will feel better the way I think. And my emotions, I'll have more control over them. And I'll be able to manage these panic attacks and mitigate these things and stop them before they start. So in yoga, there's breath work, which is very popular and trendy right now. But in yoga, it's called pranayama. And it's one of the 8 branches of Ashtanga yoga, the physical movements of yoga being one of those branches, the asana. But pranayama is purposeful holding of your breath in specific patterns. In yoga, it's so you can leave your body, but I didn't want any of that. I just knew that it gave me more mental and emotional control. So with my clients, when I'm working with my clients, whether it's a client that wants to make more art or one of my clients that wants to build and develop their art as a business, or other clients that I have that come to me as basically their therapist, then I will teach them to use those tools of the breath, which is a yogic breath work, these different patterns, so that they learn how to calm themselves down. They
Mhm.
don't need medication, they don't need drugs, they don't need people to tell them they're crazy, they don't need their psychiatrist anymore, right? They learn that they have agency to direct the energies of their body and their mind, and they can lead themselves. And it's the same with the physical body movement forms. There's certain movement forms that I teach somebody that if they're really locked up, or if they have a place in their body where they maybe had a physical or an emotional trauma, it helps unwind that thing within their body so that again, they can have more control over their thoughts. Are these the thoughts that I want to think that are really going to help me in my life? How do I choose a thought that's going to serve me? And same with emotions and that too.
Can you tell us a little bit about your work? What type of services, sessions you offer to your clients, the modalities you use, and how can people benefit from those?
Yeah. So several different ones. First and foremost is my art that I sell, which I sell in many different places. And the best place to check that out is simply Instagram. It's Nadia Fairlamb Art. You can also find that on my website too. You can see all the art on there. And that's a way to have a physical, tangible feeling of what I do. But if there's somebody out there that is stuck, has had a multitude of unwanted experiences, and you just can't shake them, no matter what you've done, then there's another way, and a better, faster way to change the trajectory of your life so that you can lead yourself and lead yourself out of this. I think the very most valuable thing that I've learned in the last few years is, how do I lead myself out instead of always relying on, oh, I'll rely on the teacher, I'll rely on my husband. It's as if I was trained everybody outside of me has an answer. You can train yourself to know your own answers. If you're here in Hawaii, of course, face to face in person. But I lead my clients through a 4-month experience, or it's a 4-month commitment. And I teach them how to do these different kinds of breath and body work. And I do EMDR with them. I do EMDR sessions for them, with them, because they have to go hand in hand. And I also teach a series of art therapy lessons along with it, so that you are having a tangible, sensory, visceral experience. And at the end of this 4 months, you've unwound parts of your story. You felt how these unwanted experiences actually have to have happened for you. They are actually a gift from source saying, I'm giving this to you, my love, so that you can become who you're supposed to be, and start to understand that you can change and transform that pain into a different emotion and sensation. It doesn't mean that pain or that a memory will ever go away, but I teach my clients and I show them step by step how to do that.
You work with many clients and help them in many different ways.
Yeah.
What are some of the most profound transformations you have witnessed with your clients, whether it is artistically, spiritually, or both?
Ooh, that's a good one. Let's see. I'll have to give a really simple one to start off with, because it just happened a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. A client of mine that she had worked with me before, and she was coming back this time for art business training. And the very first week of this business training is all about teaching them how to understand what their life impact is supposed to be. Like, we have an impact with our art, we have an impact with our life. When we know what that is and we're dialed into that, that becomes our vision. We can make more money because people can feel it. And so after the first week of her doing this, she pulled in, I think, $44,500 out of the blue.
Wow.
Like, and that was a week of working together from 4 months of work. And I'm like, dang, sis, this is good. This works.
Wow, that's
Just
amazing.
because some part of her decided that that was the truth for her. And it opened some money receiving capability. So that's an easy one. But another one would be, so this is another woman. She's an author, she's a writer. And she came to work with me because she kept repeating the same experiences over and over again, kept having the same relationship with the same kind of men, even though men were different, right? And had a desire to write and had this book bubbling out of her, but life experiences kept coming in the way, and her needing to save other people kept showing up, right? She kept taking her self out with her past paradigm. And so in working with her, it was more of a slow process. But over that period of months, we actually worked together for 6 months. She went from maybe writing a little bit every now and then to having a thick volume of essays. She would write 3 or 4 essays every week. In the past, she would maybe write a couple of essays every couple of months. have a total download for this book that she was supposed to write. All the chapters, boom, 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 was able to completely separate herself from this relationship she was in, got another dream job as a nurse, met her dream man, moved to the Big Island to live in her home, and started writing her book.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
remarkable. That's
Yep.
great.
Yeah. So it was really cool. And she had a whole lot of unwanted experience. There was sexual trauma, there was mental and emotional abuse. She came from a Filipino background. So it's a whole nother level of, cultural indoctrination that she had to
Wow.
unwind. Yep.
Wow. Your work is amazing and it helps a lot of people. And, I'm grateful that you were able to spend some time with us and talking about us, your experiences, sharing your experiences in your work with us. Now, along the same lines, many people in the audience may struggle with creative blocks, emotional wounds, and things of that nature. What advice would you give someone in that situation?
If you are struggling, get help. Period. End of story. Find a way to get help. There are a lot of really, really beautiful humans out there. And that I say, if you have a desire for help and support, trust it, believe it, run with it, sprint with it, but think really, really clearly about what you want your outcome to be. And then trust the people that come your way. Right? If a bunch of people come your way have the same expression of like, oh, this is not a good person, this is not okay, I don't feel safe here, trust that and move on. Trust that something's showing you, okay, I don't want this, cool, I get it, next. But find a way to get support, whether you go find an art therapist, whether it's EMDR, whether it's neurotherapy, which is reprogramming and repatterning the neurons of your brain, which is very helpful, which is finding coaches and mentors specifically that will help you with your thoughts, because your thoughts control your emotions control your outward actions. And if you want your outward actions to be different, you've got to control your thoughts.
And that is true. I believe in that 100%. When I
Yeah.
was going through my experiences back in 2012, 2011, 2012, I was in a very difficult time in my life, as we all, have, s- ex- moments of that, seasons of that.
Yeah.
And I remember reading a book called The Battlefield of the Mind. I can't remember the author. I apologize. But that book basically talks about how to look at a situation and try to find the positive in it. But not only that, try to catch yourself when you're like going in a rabbit hole in those negative emotions, like repeating the same cycle in your mind over and over and over again, because you're going to keep repeating that. And that's what you're going to keep attracting. So I started implementing, what I was reading, and my life completely changed.
Wow.
I was able to recognize sometimes I could have been driving, and then I was all in my mind thinking about the situation over and over again, and I was like, oh no, snap it, snap out of it. And that book was saying that you had to think of something fun, something that you like to do, and if that didn't work, listen
Wow.
to music and things like that, like shift your mind. And that was amazing. That was great for me, and I'm sure that there are other people out there that would benefit from that and from your work too.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways
Hmm.
to stop that cycle. And if there is somebody listening out there that, if people want to put you on medication, which, be very careful the side effects of most of those drugs. That's a different topic. But the topic I'm wanting to talk about is, for anybody out there that is like in a cycle in their thinking and their emotions, that it's just flatlined, you can't get out of it. Please hear me when I say your brain, the neurons in your brain, when you have an unwanted experience, there is an emotional impact. Your body goes through a trauma process, your animal self. And that thought, that emotion literally stops within your brain. And we're going to pretend that it creates like a little bubble within your physical organ of your brain. And then the electricity and the oxygen and the blood cannot get through that zone. That is one of the reasons why you continue to think that way over and over and over and over and over again. Changing the way you think on a daily basis repeatedly, again and again and again and again and again and again, for 4, 6, 12, 24, 36 months, that's what will change it. EMDR will change that. Neurotherapy will change it. Be careful for psychedelic plant medicine therapy. Be careful for that. I say if people want to do plant medicine, do it after you've done 2 or 3 years of EMDR. You're going to hurt yourself if you don't otherwise. You'll have no way to ground, right? Do many, many other things first and then do those things. I meet so many people that are like, I have trauma. I'm going to go do ayahuasca. Oh God. Like, okay, that's not a good idea. You're not going to be okay. And they come back and they're not okay because they haven't done the mental and emotional groundwork to put Humpty Dumpty back together before they've torn their psyche apart again.
Exactly. You have to
Yeah.
do the work, in other
You do.
words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's actually quite a bit of work that you have to do. There's a lot.
Yeah.
And, but that doesn't have to be a problem because the earth, I think, right now is demanding of us that we do. Great mama is like, hey, will you guys please wake up so that you don't mess things up more?
Yeah.
Please take responsibility for what's going on up here and in here. Stop being a victim. Like my teacher, hold still.
Hold still.
Don't leave your body. Come back. Come here.
Absolutely. So I wanted to take you back. You mentioned your teacher, but I wanted to take you back to when you were with that particular spiritual teacher in the community. You made your decision to say, you know what, peace out. This is not for me. I'm out.
Yeah.
Took you a long time to go from making the decision to acting on it for
Yeah.
several different things. You were, under a lot of control, I'm assuming. But you made that decision, you came back, and you're thriving right now. But for someone who might be in a similar situation today, it could be, a spiritual community or any other type of community, a relationship,
Yeah.
anything like that. And they're trying to make that change. Let's say that they made that change. What advice would you give that person going through the trenches right now?
Get as much help as you possibly can as quickly as you can. Even if it's joining an Al Anon group, you can have that free in your head. You can get mental emotional support. It's free. You can get a sponsor. I know Al Anon is children of, people that whose parents or caretakers were had drug or alcohol abuse. Al Anon is beautiful. It's free. You go through the 12 steps, you learn about it, you'll start putting yourself back together, and you'll be in a free community of people that aren't going to take your story anymore, that aren't going to take your victims. The woe is me. Oh, this happened to me. Like, no, stuff happens. Let's go. Go get a sponsor. If you can physically remove yourself from the situation you're in, get out of the relationship, get out of the spiritual group, leave the town you're living in, go find somebody else's couch to sleep on and get help, doing that. Don't go hang out with your friends that drink that are going to be like, oh my gosh, you're so traumatized, and like buy into your trauma story and feed you drugs and alcohol. Don't do that. Go eat good food, go exercise, go get a therapist. Don't do talk therapy. If you have an actual trauma, talk therapy is not going to do a damn bit of good. Go find a physiological form of therapy. And there's so much out there that can help you. There's podcasts on people that talk about removing yourself from religious groups and spiritual groups. You can listen to those. And there are a lot of websites out there. I know there's even a YouTube channel that I love listening to. The darn thing is called Cinema Therapy. And it's these two dudes. One is a movie producer and one is a professional therapist, and they take movies apart. So you can understanding what gaslighting is in a visual way. You can understanding what different forms of abuse are. So it's a really powerful free YouTube channel. And they also offer free 15-minute sessions with the therapist. There's a lot of free help out there. So, get help, get advice from somebody that's a professional, and don't sit around waiting for somebody to save you, because this is your wake up call. This is your call from God saying you can save yourself. That's
That's
why
true.
this is happening.
If you could share one key message with our audience about healing and creativity, what would that be?
Oh, you are absolutely, completely, 100% able to create anything you want right now with your hands and with your mind. Period. End of story. All you need to do is train yourself how. If you have a brain that functions, you can repattern your brain. The only way you can't do this is if you're dead.
Before we go, Nadia, if members of the audience wanted to connect with you, you mentioned your Instagram, but do you have a website or any other place where they can connect with you?
I do. Yeah. I'll send you a link that you can
Hmm.
put in all the show notes and things, where if somebody wants to learn more about the services I provide, or even get a bit of support in what direction to go, like a free consultation link,
Hmm.
where we'll walk through the biggest problem that they're having and see if my services are appropriate for them. And if they are, we can work together. And then if not, you'll walk away from the session with like a very specific 3-step plan on what's right for you and where to go to get the support that you need.
Beautiful. And if people wanted to look at your work and they go,
That again would be from my website or Instagram, and that is Nadia Fairlamb Art. You can find me everywhere, Nadia Fairlamb Art. That's Fairlamb, as in nice sheep,
Mhm.
Fairlamb. Nadia Fairlamb Art on Instagram, Facebook, and that is also my website.
Beautiful. And there will be links on the description
Yeah.
to your contact information too. Again, Nadia, it's been a wonderful pleasure having you on today. It's been a beautiful conversation. Thank you again so much for sharing your story with us, with the audience, and giving so much advice to everyone. I believe that it's needed, and it's
Oh,
amazing to know, to let people know, that they're not alone. You're going through things, you're not alone. You have podcasts, like you mentioned. There are many, many resources out there. So
yeah.
try to find your tribe.
Yeah. There's a
So
lot of free stuff, and also find a professional.
exactly. Before we go, Nadia, if there is one thing that you would hope the audience got from your life, your experiences, and our conversation today, what would that be?
Oh, gosh. If you've had some kind of experience that without a doubt was real and legitimate to you, trust it as a gift from source. Like some part of you is calling you back to knowing that your body and your spirit and your mind and your personality are wanting to communicate, and find a way to learn about it and understand it, but most importantly, make it yours. You don't have to go through a church or religion or even a cult to do it somebody else's way. Sometimes you've got to do it somebody else's way for a minute, but find a way to make it yours. Yeah, because
Absolutely.
you can. That's what it's there for.
That's true. That's true. Well, Nadia, thank you for ending us on that note. And I hope to see you next time.
Definitely. Of course. Okay. Yes.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.